What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Trippe. Welcome to another episode of the REI Live podcast. We are Real Estate Investing Live. We interview the very best real estate investors, entrepreneurs, business leaders all throughout this great country. Today's no different. My very good friend, Mr. David Toupin. How's it going today, David?
What's going on, man? I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Brian.
I'm fired up to have you. You are officially the youngest guest in REI Live podcast history. This is episode number 115.
Wow. That is awesome.
David, I want you to start right there and tell everybody how old you are, how you got into real estate, and how you've been so successful so quickly.
Yeah, man. So thanks again for having me. These are always fun to go on. So I'm 23 right now, and I've been investing for about 3.5 years. I started in college. It was my junior year. And I think like everybody else, we just start and it's like, how do I get into this space? I'm listening to podcasts. I'm on Bigger Pockets. I'm reading books. I'm listening to Rod Cleef's podcast. He's got a multifamily one. And it's just like, how do I get in? How do I get going? Where do I start? I want to, be successful and make all this money. So for me, I think I'd taken a semester or two off from college and I was doing internships. I did one in auditing, and then I had done one in investment banking thereafter. And those were awesome learning experiences. But for me, I kind of figured out what I didn't want to do. I figured out I didn't want to work in corporate America. I had some experience being an entrepreneur before that. I started my first business when I was 13 years old, and that was landscaping. My parents, I had a push lawnmower. And they're like, you don't seem like the kind of kid that's going to want to go work, make minimum wage somewhere. So why don't you, start door knocking down the street and see if you can pick up some of the neighbors and mow their lawn. So I started doing that. And by the second summer, I had bought a big old 0-turn lawnmower like the commercial guys had. And I was mowing everybody on the whole street up and down, doing landscaping, all that. So I sold that after high school when I went to college and sold that business. And then I got into real estate, kind of like I was saying, it's my junior year of college. I was doing these internships and I just, more than anything, I wanted to go out and do my own thing. And I wanted to start my own business. And real estate was just so intriguing to me because there's no ceiling, there's no limit, and anyone can do it. I'm not like a software programmer genius. I'm not I'm not an engineer-minded person. I'm not going to design the next awesome, I'm not going to design the next iPhone. That's just not who I am. But I'm a really hard worker. I'm persistent and I'm entrepreneurial. I know I can figure things out and solve problems. So real estate was just intriguing for me because anybody can do it. You hear all these stories of, Joe Schmo going out and creating a multi-million dollar business in real estate. And there's 100 different ways to do it, So it was just intriguing.
David, tell everybody what you do today specifically, and then I will actually want to, when you get done answering that question, I actually want to go back and talk about some of the story. I want to fill in a little bit of the gaps there, especially when you start talking about entrepreneurship, getting started so early. What do you do specifically today?
Yeah, so 3 years later, fast forward a little bit, I own apartment buildings. I syndicate apartment complexes. I buy, normally it's anywhere from $5 to $15 million properties where I raise capital from investors. I'll go out, I'll find a project, I'll put it under contract, raise the capital, line up the financing, throw a little bit of my own money in as well. We'll acquire it. I'll pay investors a return along the way. We'll improve the property, raise the rents, increase the value, and then either hold it long-term or sell it. Yeah.
So I want to get into that. I definitely want to talk. We've had, I told you off air, but we've had a lot of apartment people on our show recently in the last probably 2-3 months. You mentioned Rod Cleef's name. We've had Rod on the show. We had Adam Adams on the show just here recently. Your buddy and my buddy Kevin Easterly has been on the show. We've had Corey Peterson. We've had a lot of apartment people. I want to talk specifically about. I know we asked Adam a lot of questions about syndication, how the process works. So I don't really want to talk about that. I want to talk about it from really just getting into it at, not knowing anything and getting into it at such a young age. Because we actually do have a really young audience that listens to us. And I want to maybe give them some words of encouragement. So
that's awesome.
But before we do that, I'm really interested to learn more about your story because you mentioned a couple of things And I want to go back. First, you started a lawn care business when you were 13.
Yep.
And you said you bought one of those big mowers. Who is driving you around? How are you getting from lawn to lawn?
Dude, I was up and down my street. So I had that big zero turn, and you can buy one of these little trailers that goes behind it. It's like it's specifically made to be pulled by one of these things. So I would throw my backpack blower in there. I got my weed whacker, my edger. I'd throw it all in there, and I just drive up and down the street. I was doing like 25 lawns a week in my whole neighborhood.
So one of my friends told me a while back, he's like, look, if you're desperate for money, and it's like a no-brainer. You cannot anyone who has like not even like high grass, just grass that looks like it needs to be mowed. If they have grass that looks like it needs to be mowed, and you knock on their door and say, hey, I'll mow your grass for $20, $30, whatever it is, it's like 9 times out of 10 they're going to say yes.
Bro, yeah, it takes like 40 minutes. You make $20. I was doing that 30 minutes if you got a zero turn, right? So, I mean, it was awesome. It was easy. It was perfect for what I wanted to do,
And then you said you sold that business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sold the equipment and I sold it. I didn't make a ton of money, but
you sold like the accounts and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah. I really and truly hope there are some teenagers listening to this right now, because I've read studies on this, that the number one most started business in America is a lawn care business.
Yeah. And it's easy. I mean,
because it's easy.
You buy one of those used, you buy a nice, riding mower for $2,000, $2,500, and you could put a couple $100 down, and then I paid it off within like 3 months. Within a summer, I'd paid all my equipment off, and then the next summer it was just gravy.
Who's giving you credit at 13? You talking about like your parents bought it and you paid them back?
Not my teachers, dude. Not school. So I was a C student, D student, and you listen to like Gary Vaynerchuk and these other guys. They're like, all my teachers said I was gonna fail. It was like that type of stuff. I was always the hyper. You were the same way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was always that kid that like didn't. I didn't fit in. School was not my thing. I hated it. I almost dropped out of college at some point. Because it wasn't me, right? But I was always good at. I liked working hard, and I liked making money. Yeah. And so that's part of my story,
So Dave, you're still in college, right? Aren't you finishing up your degree?
No, I finished about 1.5 years ago.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. Are you sure?
Yeah.
You had an inquisitive look on your face.
I'm done. Thank God.
So I want to talk about how you got started specifically. You said you were listening to some bigger pockets, some podcasts. You were maybe watching some YouTube videos, doing the things that most people do when they are new. And you also mentioned earlier that you are just the guy that you're going to take the action. You're a hard worker. Is like what was the very first thing? If you can go back, I guess 3 years ago.
Yeah.
In pinpoint, what's the very first thing that you feel like made the biggest difference for you when you were first getting started to really propel you to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so it was a couple of things. First thing is meeting the right people. Okay. I had heard a podcast. It was on Bigger Pockets, and it was a guy that lived here in Michigan, in a city like 10 minutes away from where I lived. Mm-hmm. And I first started off doing like some small fix and flips and wholesaling. That's how I got started before I got into multifamily. So that's probably interesting for your listeners to hear, because that's most of your listener base residential.
Yes, probably. Okay. So.
Yeah. So, I heard this guy, and he's flipping houses. He's like, oh, I flipped a house, made $150,000. I own, 25, 30 rentals. And I was like, man, this guy is working in a city, just one city over. If he can do it, I can do it. I'm not just listening to people in California or Texas all over. It was real for me. So I hit this guy up and I went and met him. And I think he even asked me for like $150 because he wanted to see if I was serious. He's like, yeah, I'll do a session with you for like $150 and I'll sit with you for a couple hours. So I did that. I was a broke college kid. I had no money. And I sat with him, and this guy just blew my mind. Somebody who's still today, it made it all real for me. Somebody that was successful, that had done it, that was fairly young, and I could meet them in person, because otherwise we're just listening to over podcasts, and I'm reading books on like, how do you get into this? And he's like, give me the formula. So I met him. He was kind of teaching me, mentoring me for a while. It's like my first mentor. And then I met another guy who I ended up going and working for. He was flipping like 100 homes a year. So I went and worked for him. I did kind of acquisition side of things. We were buying foreclosures. I was, finding deals, cold calling, prospecting, going out and finding them. And then we'd either wholesale it out if it didn't fit for us, or we'd take it, flip it if it did work for us. So, I started making some money that way. And then really quickly, I worked really hard at that. And then really quickly I learned though, that it's a job. I was back in the same thing. It's a job. If I wanted to keep making money, I had to keep flipping houses, or I had to keep wholesaling. I had to come in every day and find another property. I couldn't stop. And I can either do that and make a lot of money over the next 10 years, or I could start working my way into something where I'm making passive income and building long-term wealth. And I could do that really hard for 5-10 years. And then maybe I could stop, or keep going. So multifamily is what I've kind of came upon and found, and it just made sense to me. You have, instead of a single family rental, buy a 20 unit, or, any size that's multiple units, because if one person leaves, somebody else is paying your bills. Economies of scale, it's less risky. If you buy in the right spots and you know what you're doing, you can make a lot of money doing it. So, and it's passive income, obviously, and that's the goal. So I started looking into it, and I was like, man, I don't have any money. How am I going to go buy a 12 unit? It was the first deal I bought, as a 12 unit. How am I going to go do that? I'm going to have to use other people's money, is what I came down to. And I learned what the syndication stuff was.
Yeah.
So, I guess to jump into the multifamily side of things, I went out and I found a deal that was listed from a broker, and I ended up just buying. I went and bought two 12 units. They're on the same street. I raised $150,000 to buy each of them. And then I self-managed them, operated them. I've since sold those, but those are kind of the first two deals that I did in multifamily.
I really hope that a lot of you guys who are listening to this, who are sitting on the sidelines and haven't quite jumped into real estate yet, I really hope you caught what David said probably about 2 or 3 minutes ago. He literally gave you the formula for how to get into this business, how to break into this business. And it's the formula I preach, and it's the formula I've written. Most of my book was about this that I've written. And I just cannot stress enough. If you look at my Facebook wall today, I'm putting out networking tips, how to do this, how to do that, how to meet this person, how to meet this person. I asked you the question, what was the thing that really jump-started you? What really got you into this? What can you trace back? Where can you go to trace back? That was the point that made the most sense for me, the point that really got me going. And you said, meeting the right people. You heard this guy on Bigger Pockets podcast that's from your area, and you forked out $150 that you probably couldn't afford at the time to sit down and meet with the guy. And I cannot stress that enough. That is like the most important thing that people just don't understand. It's not meeting a bunch of people. It's meeting the right people.
The right people.
And you went, and that was the right person for you at that time in your life to meet that person. I encourage everyone who's listening to this right now, write down 5 people. Right, you know who they are probably. Write down 5 people who you know you need to meet in order to take you to the next level. Whether you already have a business, you want to get to the next level, or you don't, you're sitting on the sidelines. I want to meet David. I want to meet just somebody who's really broken into the business and been successful. Write down 5 people. After you get done writing down 5 people, you need to try to trace back, who do I know that knows that person? And get that person to make a warm introduction for you. I love it. And then the second thing, David, you said, is that you went and you worked for someone who was super successful.
Yeah.
Probably doing a bunch of crap that you didn't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nothing I wanted to do.
It's the formula for success. And here's what I found, David. I'm giving it to you. David just gave you the formula for breaking into this business. And 1 out of 100, maybe, probably more like 1 out of 200 or 300 would actually do it.
Dude, there's not a single thing that can't be solved or the next step can't be taken by finding the right person, right? It's all about the people. Everything I do now, I could not be doing, and maybe we'll get into it, specifically what I'm working on right now, could not happen unless I knew specific people and built the right relationships. That is 100% it.
Stop asking the question, how do I do this? And start asking the question, who can help me do this?
Or and then work your ass off.
Who can do this for me?
Yeah.
And then that's obviously the part of the equation that a lot of people don't understand. I got to work my tail off to get this thing done. So
Yeah.
I love it. And I love that you said that. I love that answer, because here's the thing. You're not the first. I asked that question to a lot of people, and you're not the first person to say that. That ends up, and that's what I did, and that's what a lot of people that came before me did. You have to pay your dues. There's so many people out there trying to be gurus,
Yep.
and they've done 1 deal, 2 deals, or in some cases, no deals. They've got a lot of education because they've listened to a lot of podcasts and watched a lot of videos, but they've never taken the action to do it. And pay your dues first.
Totally, dude. A lot of people aren't. So after those internships, I got out of, I did investment banking internship, and I had a 6-figure job offer that I turned down on the last day of my internship off of listening to podcasts. And I met with that one dude once, and I had got my real estate license, and I sat down, and they must have thought I was crazy. They took me out to a nice lunch, and I said, guys, I've had an awesome summer working with you. I really appreciate it. I've learned so much. Respectfully, this is my dream, and I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah.
I'm still friends with those people today. They still invite me out to events and stuff, and they're like, "Oh man, I love it. I love that you went out and did your own thing." So
that's awesome. All right, so let's talk about the apartment stuff, because I'm really interested. This is the biggest question I have. So you're 23 years old today, and you said in the beginning, I asked you the question, "What are you doing today?" And I raised millions and millions. We buy apartment complexes anywhere from 5 to, what'd you say, 15, 25 million, whatever it was. How does do you ever get any backlash because of your age when you go to raise money?
No.
And why?
Because I know what I'm talking about. I think it's because I've educated myself enough to the point where if you spoke to me on the phone for 30 minutes about a project I'm working on and you were interested in investing, you would feel confident investing with me by the end of that, because I've made it a point to know exactly what I'm talking about. If I don't know something, I go and figure it out. I don't know everything, not even close, but I know enough that people can tell that they can trust investing with me, because I know the process. I've done several of these. I've built a good track record. And if I'm not good at something, like let's say property management, that's not my forte. I'm not very good at it. I'm good with the numbers. I'm good at lining the financing up, raising the money. I know somebody that does, or I have a partner that is really good at that fills those gaps, right? So it's about having a good team and knowing what you're talking about.
So let me ask you about raising money, because I feel like it can be universal, and I know you're raising money specifically in a syndication form when you're trying to buy like a really big building or a really big complex. But I'm sure a lot of the skills and a lot of the verbiage that you use is going to translate even to maybe someone like me or someone who's listened to the show who maybe focuses more on single family. Maybe they're doing rehabs and they're using other people's money. What do you say on the phone? Obviously, you know what you're talking about because you've been doing it for so long and you've educated yourself very well. But what are some things? What are some key things that we can say, whether we're on the phone or in an in-person meeting with someone who does have money and we are trying to get them to loan us for maybe our real estate deals, maybe it is a syndication?
Yeah, I think it's hardest when you don't have a track record and you don't have a couple projects that you can, show people as an example that you've proven your model. So it's definitely easier for me now than when I started. It was very difficult. The best thing you can do is keep it simple. People will not want to invest with you if it's complicated. There's so many different places people can put their money nowadays.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. You have to work with, this is paramount. You have to have integrity. I can't stress that enough. I left my first partnership because I could not control the integrity in my organization, and that I was done. We could have gone and made a lot of quick money, but for long term, it wouldn't have worked out. Integrity is the number one most important thing in my business right now, and I hold that very dear to me because we have a lot of investors who are putting a lot of their hard-earned money with us, and you want them to know that. I make sure to say that in all my conversations with them. I tell them stories about why integrity is important to me, because then they can know, they can trust me that I'm treating their money as if it was my own.
Right. Definitely. And that's definitely a great thing for sure in any business is you have to do what you say you're going to do and vice versa. You said the very first deals you ever did, you raised 150,000 to buy two different, was it 12 units?
Mm-hmm.
How did you do that when it was your very first deal, never done anything? How were you able to do that? What were you able to say? How did you raise the money?
Yeah. So at that point, I wasn't very experienced in multifamily. I was, I'd been looking at a lot of deals, running numbers. I kind of had a decent understanding of like operating expenses, how the financing is going to work, the bank loan and all that. But it really came from the network and friends, right? So I think most of the people that were in those two deals were other residential investors. So they're people that had, they were flipping houses and maybe had an extra $50,000 or $100,000 sitting around, or $25,000. I think I had somebody at 15,000, even small amount. And I just kind of cobbled it together from people in the network and people that I knew, and was able to put it together. They were all interested and intrigued about multifamily and earning some passive income. I put a package together. I showed them the numbers. I said, this is how much we're going to put into it. This is where the rents are at and the income's at. This is where I'm going to get the rents to. Here's some comparable properties that have those rents. I'm going to show you how I can actually achieve that. Here's where our expenses are. Here's where I'm going to cut our expenses. This is kind of the plan. And you have a good, solid plan in place. And when you talk with confidence about something, I think Rod Cleave says this a lot. When two people are having a conversation, the one that has the most knowledge and the most confidence in what they're saying typically becomes the leader. It becomes the person that kind of controls the conversation. So, that's kind of how it went. A good plan.
So walk us through it after that, because I think you said, you said you managed that first one?
I self-managed both of those. Yeah.
Okay, so you self-managed both of those. So talk me through this. So you raise the money. Mm-hmm. You purchase it, and then obviously you have to go through some renovations. You have to raise rents. You have to deal with leases, get people, get tenants to move in. Maybe you got to evict some. Maybe you got to kick some out. There's a lot of different dynamics going on here. Just walk us through that first deal. What do you remember the most? What was most memorable? Maybe what are some mistakes that you made?
Oh man, I made way more mistakes on those two than positive outcomes. But we ended up doing well, and we made money, and our investors did okay. We exited those. We exited those about a year and a half after we bought them, late 2018. So mistakes. First mistake was didn't raise enough money. One of the properties was squeaky clean. Some guy had owned it and managed it for like 25 years. He was the guy that was out there every day picking up trash, sweeping it, keeping it super, super well maintained. Mm-hmm. The other one was not. Mm-hmm. The other one also had a flat roof, which was not in great condition. We got it inspected, but the inspection did not come back with accurate results. We bought it, and then we really quickly figured out, wow, there's tons of leaks. This thing is not in good shape. The seller told us he fixed half of it. He didn't do anything. And that was just a drain on our maintenance budget. So not raising enough money is a killer, because you never want to have to go back to your own investors. So I ended up putting in money out of my own pocket to do some repairs along the way and make sure, because I wasn't going to go back to my investors and take money out of their pockets after I told them this is what I was going to do. Right. Mm-hmm. So I ended up fronting money on my own to do that. In the end, we did well. We sold them. The market's good, and it was in a good place. So we were able to get good prices for those and put some nice profit back in the investors' pockets. But I learned a ton. I learned a ton on the legal side of things, contractually, how to put together all those documents for the investors and so many little things.
So it sounds like to me that you exited that fairly recently.
Yeah, it's about 6 months ago.
So by the time this airs, probably more like 8 months ago, because we're a couple months behind right now. Yeah. So do you mind? I'd love to know, can you give us some numbers?
Yeah, sure.
What do you, because you're a numbers guy. We're going to talk about, you have a good deal analyzer as well that you've created. Give us some numbers. Just, you don't have to be super specific if you don't want to be, just be as specific as you want to be. But yeah. I'm really interested to know, it was these were 150 each that you purchased, you raised, said you didn't raise enough, probably for repairs and things. Give us some numbers. What were you expected to get? What, or, sell for? Sure. What did you sell for? Things like that.
Yeah, so we bought them for they're almost identical. So we bought them for about 560,000 a piece. I don't know what that comes out to, is like 47,000 a unit.
Mhm.
We ended up putting in, I think one we only raised like $15,000 extra for renovations because it didn't need a lot. The other one we raised like 30,000 when we should have raised 60,000 for renovations. So we ended up renovating a couple of units, and we were bringing the 2 bedrooms from $620 a month on average up to $730. So we got some pretty good rent bumps. And then on the other one, it was all 1 bedrooms. We were bringing them from 600 up to 700 a month. And we ended up selling them for, I think 1.3 million combined. I don't know what the math comes out to exactly. It was like 54,000 a unit. And we got our investors on one of them is closer to like a 14% overall annualized return. The other one is like a 13%. So, and I think we're projecting like 15 to 16.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask you. So you project 15, 16 and you hit 13, 14. When you're talking to, I'm just curious, when you're talking to a potential investor, obviously you can't guarantee anything because it's risky, it's real estate, anything can happen. Correct. But when you project this, do you give them kind of a range? Like, we expect to hit this, but it could be as low as this, as high as this, or you're just like, nope, this is what we expect?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to put a plan together and we're not going to tell them a range. It'll just be, one set of numbers. This is what we think annually. This is our goal, is to hit this on an annual return basis. And this is our goal overall when we sell the property, to get you, let's say, a 15% internal rate of return and like an 8% overall cash on cash annually. So, for example, the next deal I did, we projected and I'm living in that property right now. I went from a 12 unit. I bought a 96 unit here in Michigan. That was my next deal. And we bought it for $43,000 or $44,000 a unit. If I wanted to sell it now, we'd probably sell it for $68,000 a unit. Mm-hmm. We'd probably sell it. We bought it for $4.2 million. We'd probably sell it for $6.5 to $7 million. And so if I sold it right now, I'd get our investors about a 30% internal rate of return. So, and we projected a 15. So we've more than doubled that expectation right now because we bought it right. I raised more than enough money this time. I fixed a lot of the mistakes from my first 2 smaller deals. Mm-hmm. And so, our goal is to be conservative and go in with a plan that we really intend to hit. But I also intend to beat that every time. I would like to undersell and overperform.
For sure.
Yeah.
And this is just a curiosity for me. When you project 15 and you come back at 13, like a real result, is that, what do people say about that? Is that good? Is that obviously you wanted to do better. You had some challenges at your first one. What's the general just feeling about the job that you did from your investors on the first ones?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I didn't like it. I wanted to improve and do better. Obviously, we made several mistakes on those that prevented us from doing that. Investors were all happy because in the end, there were some bigger problems. Like I said, that roof that came up, if we had to replace that roof, we would have probably been negative. So we found a buyer at the right time. It worked out. We sold it, and it could have been worse, I guess.
Gotcha.
So it ended up, everyone was pretty happy. A couple of them at that point anyways were like, yeah, I kind of wanted my money back now anyways to go and do something else with it. So, I'm glad I'm okay that we're selling. Yeah. And several of them have already reinvested with me, and the others have said they would be more than happy to invest with us again. So.
And that's what I was going to ask you next. So that the proof's in the pudding there. So correct. I'm sure everyone is curious, because I'm curious, because you mentioned the 96 unit, I think it was, that you're living in. Mm-hmm. Was your second deal or maybe your third deal. Talk about that deal too, because I think I love talking about deals and the numbers and things like that. You're a numbers guy as well. Talk about that deal. How are you able to live in it? How do you, and this is a separate question, but how do you even get paid for doing something like this?
Sure.
I think a lot of people are curious.
Absolutely. So this this deal, quite frankly, changed my entire life, and it happened because I sent a mailer out. Um, I sent a couple rounds of mailers saying, "Hi, hi, Mr. ABC person. I see that you own an apartment at this address. Are you looking to sell? If so, I'd love to talk to you because I'm interested in buying." Super simple, on like a corporate letterhead. I get a call from a guy. He's local to Michigan, and he's a very large owner of real estate. He owns over $1 billion in property, and this was his smallest and oldest property.
Wow.
He built it 40 years ago, and he held it free and clear up till now. He had paid it off, and he owned it free and clear, and it was very mismanaged. And so we started talking. We toured the property, and he just really liked me. We clicked. He's 71 years old, and he really liked me. He's like, "Man, I kind of see myself in you," when I was younger. So, long story short, we ended up negotiating a price that was way below market value, and I think, like I was saying, we bought it for $44,000 a unit. We bought it for $4.2 million. If he had just held on a year and sold it as is, he probably could have sold it for $1 million more.
Yeah. Wow.
So we got a steal on this one, and it was direct to seller. We went in, and the one bedrooms, so it's half and half 1 bedrooms, half 2 bedrooms, 800 square foot 1 bedrooms, 1,010 square foot 2 bedrooms. And the 1 bedrooms averaged $650 a month. And when we bought it, and the 2 bedrooms averaged $750 a month. We have been able to take the 1 bedrooms from $650 up to $850 and $950 for doing probably like a $3,000 renovation.
Wow.
Practically nothing. And then the 2 bedrooms I've gotten from $750 all the way up to $1,175 and $1,200 for 2 units, for doing like a $5,000 renovation, which is like a $400 increase. So we have done really well on this one. It was just mismanaged. They had kind of taken their eye off the ball. They're focused on bigger and better things. And for me, this was bigger and better. And it worked out perfectly. Perfect timing. So I made every mistake in the book on this one too. And we could talk about that stuff as well, on the acquisition side, I think. But it's been great fun so far, and we've done awesome.
So how are you able to live in it, and how do you get paid?
Yeah. So how do you get paid is the first one. So when I put one of these projects together, it's called a syndication, right? And the gist of that is I'm going to figure out how much it's going to cost for me to buy this property. So we're going to get a loan, for example. So on this one, we got an 80-20 loan. So we had to put 20% down. We also have closing costs. We did $500,000 in renovations to the property. You have all these expenses. So I lump all that together, and that's the amount of money I need to raise to go accomplish this. So it was $1.7 million. Included in that is a fee called an acquisition fee that I, as a sponsor, will get for putting this deal together and taking it down. So on this deal, there's a 3% fee. Is $126,000. It's 3% of the purchase price. And that's what I split with my partner on the deal. So, we brought somebody in that could help us take down the loan, and he rose a little bit of money as well on the project. So, first part about how you get paid, acquisition fee. So we get a fee up front. Normally it's 2 to 3% of the purchase price. Second way of how we get paid is I self-manage this. So I get a 4% management fee on gross income, which I split with my partner. That's about $40,000 a year in management fees that come to us. You get an asset management fee, and what that is, it's 1% and 1% of gross income. And what that's for is for continuing to oversee, the lender, the investors, doing the investor reporting and whatnot. So let's say I hired out a third-party management company instead of self-managing. They would get the 4%. I'd still get that 1%,
right?
Because I'd still have to oversee them, making sure it's going well, the plan, and then they're following the plan. So that's part of it. I also get a piece of equity in the property. So for putting this deal together, what we did was we pay our investors an 8% preferred return So just think of it like a base rate of return is 8%.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if we raise $1 million, 8% is 80,000. The first $80,000 every year that the property makes goes to investors. Anything over that, what we have is a 70-30 split. So once we hit that 8% benchmark, we're incentivized to get over that because I get 30 cents on the dollar of anything that goes over that. We have a 70-30 split. So investors get 70%, I get 30%.
Wow.
So we'll make some additional money every year after we hit that 8%, which we did on our first year, and we're about to do in our second year as well. So the last part of it is when we sell the property, I get 30% of the profits. So let's say we have $2 million in profits when we sell. $600,000 would come to our ownership sponsorship group. So that's the other part of it. So you get fees and then equity.
So you get 30% equity.
Correct. 30% equity in the deal.
That's pretty steep. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. This was a good structure. Normally nowadays I'm doing 80-20 because deals are a little tighter. Market's just hot. We have to pay a little bit more for properties, but
right.
Yeah.
23 years old. David, could anybody do this?
I mean, if I can do it, yeah, for sure. I'm no smarter than anybody else. Just hard work.
But you are a smart guy. I mean, you're a smart guy, but you just put in the work.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I've been working like 80 hours a week for the past 3 years without even looking up. But I mean, that's what it takes.
That is what it takes. Tell everybody what does your day-to-day look like today? Yeah.
So today I woke up. I just got back from San Diego yesterday. I was at it's called the NMHC, National Multi-Family Housing Conference. And it's like 5,000 people, all brokers, lenders, buyers, investors. It was awesome. So I just got back last night. I was up at 6 a.m. Because I was pretty behind on analyzing deals. I have a guy that analyzes all the properties that come in my deal analyzer spreadsheet, sends them to me with a summary, and then I review them and then kind of decide what we're going to offer on them. So I had like 15 in the queue. So I was up at 6 a.m. I did like 7 straight hours of analyzing deals. Then I had, a call with my partner in Texas on a deal. We're going over some stuff that we're looking at. I had 3 investor calls lined up. So every investor that goes onto my website and signs up that says, hey, I'm interested in investing with you, I set up a call because I want to get to know them, build that relationship, see what they're looking for in an investment, if we're even a good fit for them, that kind of stuff. So I had 3 of those calls, have this podcast. And then after this, I got another call with an investor. Got to go through a couple other deals that circle back around to us that we're putting offers on. So
living the dream.
Yeah, I love it. It's fun.
David, tell everybody how they could get a hold of, like, what's your website? Maybe there's somebody listening to this who may want to invest with you. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my company's called Obsidian Capital, and you can Google that. It's www.obsidiancapitalco.com. You can get in touch with me at my email. It's david@obsidiancapitalco.com. You could look me up on Facebook, David Toupin, last name Toupin. And yeah.
How do you spell Obsidian? Is it with an O?
Yeah, Obsidian.
Perfect. And then you have a deal analyzer as well. Like, you've spent a lot of time. I know we were going over this when I met you in Atlanta. It's been, 4, 5, 6 months ago. You were going over this deal analyzer that you have that you say is better than any deal analyzer that's on the market, and that's actually something that people can get. Yeah.
So I've created this thing I started it when I was doing those internships, and when you do investment banking, you're basically in Excel 24/7. So I learned how to use it a lot, and I built this over the past 3 years to help me analyze multifamily properties, syndications. It does splits for investors, the financing terms, all that good stuff. So you can go on my website too, and you'll find some details about it, and you could buy it right through there. I sell it for $250, and it comes with a guidebook on how to use it, and it's going to help you make millions if you want to buy apartments.
Not without hard work.
And
meeting the right people.
Yeah.
Exactly. David, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. I learned a ton not only just about you, but about apartment syndication. And I love the fact that we were able to actually kind of sort of go over a couple of deals, do a couple of in-depth deal analysis right here on the show is really awesome. So thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely, man. Had fun. Thanks again.
Awesome. Guys, hit the subscribe button. We've got some incredible guests on the horizon. You don't want to miss them. Make sure you hit the little alert button as well. Make sure you rate us and review us. We love you so much, and we'll see you next time.